Hello and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. I am Paul, and I realize we haven't done our fancy little bridge background in a while, so let's bring that back.
We haven't done TNT in a while.
That is true. We've had some things keeping us away, but we are back and we are covering episodes 16 through 20 of The Next Generation Season 5. So, those episodes, real quick, are Ethics, The Outcast, Cause and Effect, The First Duty, and Cost of Living. And as always, guys, we will go around the bush and let everyone shoot on these episodes. And I'm actually going to go first this time.
Okay.
So, full disclosure of these 5 episodes, I went back and actually watched Ethics twice. And I'll get into why when we talk about the episode, but when I first saw the episode, I really did not like it. But the second time around, I, again, spoiler free for now, looked at all points of view regarding the situation in this episode and understood it a little bit better. And now I say it's a pretty good episode. And then kind of the same with the Outcast. That one I thought was an okay episode, certainly not one of the best.
More
But
depressing.
yeah, it's definitely depressing. Cause and Effect and The First Duty for me are tied for episode of the week. Cause and Effect, well, you'll see why in a little bit. And then The First Duty, I'm going to make a bold claim here and say that this is the best Wesley episode out of the whole show. And again, we'll get into why when we get there.
Yeah.
And then finally, Cost of Living. It's a Loaxana Troy episode. What can you say?
Yeah, but it's not one of the worst Luxiana.
I went into this one expecting to not like it because I really don't like Loaxana. I didn't hate it. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. So, Crit, what do you think of these 5 episodes? And real quick, hello to ActionCom.
I liked it. Solid season 5 TNG. The quality is still good, but then cost of living. A lot of very moral centered episodes like ethics. That was heavy, and then I would say cost of living. Uh, because there have been a lot of cases where people try to cover up things, and again it's the how you say it, tell the truth, always the truth and nothing but the truth. Don't. Cause and Effect is a great one. A great well, I think we described it before. Bottle shows. Bottle shows are episodes of TNG where there's no planets, there's no guests, not really any guest stars. It's really just kind of done cheaply, and um, I don't know if this was a bottle show because but it did feel you can make up when the story is just set on the Enterprise. You don't need anything fancier. Um, uh, the Outcast. I would actually rewatching it. Me and Cash were laughing because it hits hard in modern times. But I remember when I first saw the episode, I was more depressed because I watched TNG the first time back in 2013, before all this gender politics nonsense began. And to me, it was depressing because I felt, you know, like someone's basically, they know who they are, but they're being told that you should just be this. It's a trend. It's our trend. So if you're not, then you're not one of us, basically. And there's some stuff I found out about the Outcast. We'll get to it. And the cost of living, throw it out the really
Out the airlock, as Brandon says.
and then it's just a really weird episode. So
Yeah. ActionCom, by the way, says the meaning of the outcast has changed over time. That is, it means something else now than it did then. That is true. And unfortunately, since I'm looking at this for the first time, I kind of have no choice but to look at it through today's lens. Pacific, what about you?
Well, all 5 episodes are good in their own right. I know there might be some problems with the cost of living, but you got to look at it like this: take whatever good you can get from that episode, and don't really pay attention to the bad. Of course, there are 2 very good episodes in this block that I've always enjoyed, and it's Cause and Effect, and of course, First Duty. Both fantastic episodes. And The Outcast. Back when this episode originally aired, you just thought, okay, it's an alien race. You didn't realize that some 30 years later, how relevant this episode would still be.
Oh, yes.
And
then,
then of course, Ethics. What a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get 2 different points of view. You get the view of Worf, and you get the view of the doctor that comes on board.
As well as Dr. Crusher.
Yeah. So, all great episodes, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So with that, let's go ahead and break into these episodes, starting, of course, with Ethics. And this episode starts with Geordi and Worf. They're going through the cargo bay, inspecting some different barrels, just making chit chat about the poker games that they play and how Worf regrets losing to Counselor Troy. And Geordi admits that thanks to his visor, he can see through the cards. Which, by the way, I'm gonna try something real quick. I literally never realized that I could do this, but what do you think of my impression of Geordi's visor?
Not bad.
It's just a comb.
I know, but if you get a beret,
You're
it'll
right.
actually be the visor. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or beret.
Cash is on his way. So.
Cash is on his way? Okay, good. Do me a favor, Crit, and DM him our secret plan. You know which one.
Okay.
And Phil just sent me a video about Kiss. But anyways, they're inspecting the barrels to find one that's leaking. And the leaking container, it's way up high. And there's another barrel in front of it. And the leaking container, according to ActionCom here, causes the heavy container to fall. And it lands on Cash Money. What's going on?
Not too much.
That's good. So we are talking about, you haven't missed much at all. We're talking about the first episode, but before we do you want to real quick comment on all 5 as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, Ethics was interesting about the whole should Worf live or die, and those 2 doctors and Crusher and the other doctor, I can't remember her name now, deciding what their fate should be, and Worf saying if he can only be half a man, he just wants to perish. The second episode is I'll just go through the one. Cause and Effect was really good, where they keep going through that time loop until Data basically figures out how they can fix the problem. And the First Duty with Wesley Crusher was quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
With the whole, he has to actually face consequences because he actually lied, and the commanding officer of that mission, of that training exercise, I should say, is decides to take full blame. The Oksana, yeah, episode was kind of all over the place, and then Outcast, I think it was like, "Hey, I'm an alien. I feel this way. I don't feel this way. Please, we live on this planet. Change me." It was Crit and I watched that. That was pretty messed up.
Mhm.
Yeah, but. Mm-hmm.
So real quick, Dad actually just sent me something that I want to show you guys. So let me bring this up real quick. This is a gift that he had sent me. So
Oh,
apparently this is one of
nice.
those color changing mugs that depend on temperature. And if you
Nice.
can't tell, that's a Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and
Mhm.
Uhura.
And they're beaming up. They're beaming down.
Yep.
And
That's
then on
pretty
the other
cool.
side,
Wow. Ooh.
I like that. Yeah.
so yeah, that's what Dad sent me, and I thought you guys would like to see it also.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Who knew transporters ran on cold and hot water?
Well, they
Uh,
I'm also surprised they didn't run on nitrium.
True.
So, as we were talking about when Cash showed up, one of the leaking containers was holding up another container, and that container that was being held up falls and lands right on top of Worf, completely knocking him out. When he comes to, he is in sick bay, and Dr. Crusher is examining him, and he notices that he can't move his legs, and at first he thinks that Dr. Crusher is using some form of restraints on him, but the doctor unfortunately says that she's not using restraints, that his spinal cord got crushed and he's paralyzed from the waist down, meaning he will likely never walk again despite all her medical knowledge. So Worf is absolutely distraught at this. And the Enterprise crew, of course, are doing everything that they can to help him. For example, and I'm going to have to look up who this doctor is. Give me a quick second.
Dr. Ellen DeGeneres.
That's who she looks like.
a little bit. She does. Just
Her
a
name
bit
is
there.
Dr. Russell. So anyways, I found out, according to Wikipedia, Ronald D. Moore said he hated working on this episode. Why?
I'm not really sure. I've never really even heard him say his disdain for this episode. And
Yeah, like I said, it's Wikipedia, so take it with a tablespoon of salt, but
Okay.
it just kind of seems weird.
I'll
Hot
take it with a
take.
tablespoon of gach.
Crit hot take.
Grit hot take, go ahead.
Beverly Crusher is kind of the villain of this episode.
Ooh, that is a spicy take.
Wow.
So, before I respond to that, let's continue through the episode so we can explore exactly what crit means. So, Dr. Russell is brought on board, and she is a big admirer of Dr. Crusher, saying that she had read her report on cybernetic regeneration. Meanwhile, Riker is called to Worf's room in sickbay, saying that he needs his help, that as a paraplegic, he can't live as a Klingon. His Klingon life is effectively over. It's also important to note that when Dr. Crusher and Dr. Russell are talking, that Dr. Crusher had reached out to the Klingon homeworld, to their medical authorities, and she found out that usually in spinal cord injuries like this, they just let the patient die because they really don't take much stock in, I guess, trauma like that. And this is reflected also in Worf's attitude because he asks him to perform something called, as ActionCom puts it, the Hegba ceremony, a ritual literally designed around committing suicide. And Riker is absolutely beside himself with this. He's like, no, I don't want to help you kill yourself. There's, you can still live a good life and be paralyzed, but Worf doesn't see it that way. He, his Klingon upbringing leads him to believe that if he cannot stand and fight as a warrior, he's not a true Klingon, and therefore why should he keep living? So when you guys heard that, what did you guys think?
Oh, I mean, it's the Klingon culture. And it's how things are done in the Klingon culture. You can't really sit back and, go into this and say, well, that's wrong. It may be wrong in our point of view as humans, but in the Klingon point of view, it's an honorable sacrifice.
Right. And so, of course, Riker, I'm sure he tells everyone else about this. And so they're trying to figure out every single way that they can to treat him. And none of the conventional methods are working out. The most that they can do, and they offer this to Worf, is give him implants in different areas of his lower torso and legs, basically as prosthetic mental receptors, you could almost say, that would help interpret the signals his brain is sending to his legs, and that would allow him to have 60% of his mobility restored. Worf refuses this, saying that he does not want to be looked upon as a half Klingon cybernetic freak lurching down the hallways. So Dr. Russell offers him an alternative, one that she had previously talked about with Dr. Crusher. And Dr. Crusher had grave reservations about this. And she thought that her and Dr. Russell had agreed that they weren't going to suggest this, but upon hearing how desperate Worf was, Dr. Russell suggested something that she calls, in fact, I don't think it had a name, but she brought along an experimental device, as ActionCom said, where it can scan the DNA of an organ and create an entirely new replacement. She's run tests on it in the holodeck, but has never actually tested it on a real live humanoid. So right there, we get some tension between Dr. Crusher and Dr. Russell. A, because Dr. Russell went over Dr. Crusher's head to suggest this, and B, because Dr. Crusher does not like the fact that pretty much Dr. Russell is willing to gamble with Worf's life to test her new technology. Meanwhile, Riker goes and tries to get advice from the captain about what to do here. And this scene in particular is a good portion of the reason why initially I didn't like this episode. And even still, I can't help but think that Picard was kind of in the wrong here, pretty much saying we need to respect his customs even if we don't agree with them. And in all other and honestly, I can't help but sympathize with Riker on this one, because yes, you want to consider and respect other people's customs, but when it comes to literal life and death, if you see that your friend is going to do something to harm themselves, whether it's part of their culture or not, you almost feel a responsibility as their friend to try and stop them. You guys get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because even Riker mentions it in this episode.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so what did you guys think about this conversation between Riker and Picard? Do you guys agree with me, or do you think Picard was right?
I can understand your point of view having just watched this episode for the first time. But I think in certain aspects, Picard is right. You have to respect the customs of different cultures.
Yep, I'm on Picard's side for this one. Now,
Okay.
it really depends on the choice of Worf himself. I really think he shouldn't be forced to. He shouldn't be forced to make a choice,
Mm-hmm.
he shouldn't be forced. If he doesn't want to do something, then he shouldn't be coerced into it.
Right.
It's like us coercing you to watch Caddyshack, even though you don't want to. Caddyshack 2, not Caddyshack 1.
I was
Hey,
going to say,
hey,
he's going
I-
to have a good time watching
hey,
Caddyshack.
I would willingly watch Caddyshack 2 just to get Phil to shut up about it. And I'm only saying that because he's not listening right now.
You never
Oh,
know.
he could be lurking. He always has his cloaking device on.
Here, let me try his at least an abbreviated version of his mating call.
I know this ship like the back of my hand.
So, anyways, another aspect in play here is we get another appearance from Alexander, and Worf, being so embarrassed by his physical condition, does not want Alexander to see him. And of course, Alexander, being a child, doesn't understand this, and so Deanna is left with the unfortunate responsibility of trying to convey what his father wants to Alexander. So, while all of this is going on, the Enterprise is responding to let me see what Memory Alpha exactly here says. They are responding to the USS Denver after they had basically had an unfortunate encounter with a Cardassian gravity mine. Like there are so many casualties that pretty much all of the shuttle bays on the Enterprise had to be converted to makeshift emergency rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Russell decides to lend a hand with this. We see it worked. It worked, Phil. I played the "I know this ship like the back of my hand" clip to get you here, and you showed up.
That's too funny.
So, anyways, so Dr. Crusher and Dr. Russell are doing their best they can to help out the casualties from the Denver. And Crusher notices that Russell is examining someone that had died. And she questions Dr. Russell about this and learned that she had tried to use an experimental treatment on this guy that ultimately didn't work, and he died from that. And Dr. Crusher is absolutely appalled here. And Dr. Russell tries to justify it by saying, listen, he didn't die for nothing. The information I've gathered from this is absolutely invaluable to my research. But Crusher argues back that you don't do your research like this recklessly, and you don't play with people's lives for your own research. And and sort of the attitude that Dr. Crusher takes, I believe that's why you said that from your point of view, Dr. Crusher is the antagonist of this episode. Is that right?
Yes.
By the way, I love that picture.
Well, I would say the both doctors are in the wrong, but I think the fact that Crusher, acted the way she did was over against Worf's better judgment. I just really think she was overstepping her boundaries. So
I think what it boils down to is, and I'm saying this as someone that ultimately thinks that Dr. Crusher was in the right, even though in the end Dr. Russell ended up being right. I think what it was is that Dr. Crusher was being too cautious and Dr. Russell was being too careless. Wouldn't you say that's about right?
maybe, well, Ms. Dr. Crusher was kind of careless to how Worf felt throughout the episode.
Right.
Basically, it's like you want to. Oh, those are.
But
Those
Phil,
are-
I have McDonald's coupons.
Expires December 2010.
Don't tell him that.
He doesn't need to know. But I can hear what you're saying, Crit, from basically Crusher not taking into account Worf's
Kind of coddling him in a way.
Yeah. So while this is going on, Worf decided to give the electronic implants a try, and he manages to stand with them in time to get a visit from Alexander. But his muscles in his legs give out on him, and he falls to the ground and yells at both Deanna and Alexander to leave because he's just that embarrassed about his condition. So while that's going on, Crusher and Dr. Russell are having a conversation about this, and it ends with Dr. Crusher stripping Dr. Russell of all medical responsibilities and duties aboard the ship because she disagrees with her reckless nature of how she approaches her experiments. This catches the ears of Captain Picard, who has a sit-down talk with Dr. Crusher, saying, listen, I know you do not like how Dr. Russell does this, but for Worf, what you're asking him to do, he just can't accept he just cannot accept the fact that he can live a good life without the use of his legs. You're basically asking too much of him. So you need to consider whether or not it's in his best interest to withhold this particular surgery from him. And by the way, hello to Gap After Dark, who said that they had found us from Pacific 414. Awesome, man. Well, thank you for being here. And I would say to you and to anyone else watching, if you are not subscribed, of course, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below, because we don't just do Star Trek stuff. We literally do everything on here.
Yep. The only thing Paul won't do is sing the Mothra song with a guitar.
Because I don't speak Japanese.
There's a translated version.
It's still not going to happen.
We'll see.
Unless, but we'll get to that later. So eventually, Dr. Crusher reaches out to the higher-ups of Starfleet Medical, and after consulting with them and, quote, a good bit of soul-searching, she reluctantly allows Dr. Russell to do her surgery. But before this happens, Riker has a talk with Worf. He walks in holding Worf's Klingon, I'm guessing full-length vest that he wore during Sins of the Father, and a Klingon dagger, where he says that he had researched this Hegba ceremony and finds it absolutely distasteful. but ultimately admits that he would be willing to help Worf if it was his place. However, in looking up the procedures of this ceremony, he found that it's actually not his place to help Worf with the ceremony. It's a living family member's role, preferably the firstborn son. And Worf is absolutely unwilling to have Alexander be part of that ceremony. So he calls in Alexander and says, listen, Klingon tradition requires that I die, but I'm going to break with Klingon tradition and I'm going to choose to live. And then he tells Alexander that he's going to be going through this surgery and that he might still die. So, what did you guys think of that scene?
I mean, what is there to really say? I mean, you're putting the responsibility from a friend onto the son, and you got to take into account that Alexander's half human. His human emotions are going to take over.
You're right.
Yes. He doesn't want to lose his father. He already lost his mother.
Mhm.
And he was already sent to his grandparents to live with them and then back to Worf because his grandparents were just, up in age.
You're right.
They couldn't take care of him. So
Mhm.
the thought of Alexander losing his father, well, imagine if you're the character and what you'd be going to. This is a lot to ask for.
Exactly. And I would say this, that even that if Alexander did have to go through that ceremony, it would honestly be worse for him to see to see his father die in such a way, because he would be there to witness it. And if I remember correctly, he wasn't there to witness what happened to his mother.
He wasn't, but remember, Worf said to him when they went into her quarters and saw Kalar there dead, Worf said, "Look upon death and always remember it."
Mm-hmm. So, as Worf is getting ready for the surgery, he has a conversation with Troi, asking whether Troi would be willing to take care of Alexander should this surgery go wrong, and Troi agrees. Now, real quick, I want to make a note of this moment, because I do happen to know that in the later episodes, Worf and Troi fall in love with each other and have something of a relationship. And I bet you could make the argument that this is the moment where that relationship might start. Would you guys say?
Yep.
Yeah.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Okay. ActionCom has a question. Do you think Troi went to Dr. Crusher after she agreed to take Alexander, grabbed her shirt, pulled her within an inch of her nose, and told her that this operation has to work? I'm guessing that's what you said, man. You ran out of space. Yeah, this operation had better work. I don't think so. I think Deanna would have been more than happy to take care of Alexander should the worst case scenario happen.
I agree.
I agree.
I think with Deanna's character, she would have probably gone to Beverly and said, "This is the situation, and I'm worried about Alexander and how he's gonna, respond to all this if it does happen."
Right? Which real quick before we get into the surgery, I do have a quick question for Captain Kaval. What would the Klingon outlook be on Worf breaking from tradition here?
He should have died.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
And hello, Gap After Dark.
I feel like
Welcome.
I've seen that name somewhere. Have we been on stream together before?
Well, I mean, who knows? You may have been on a stream with Gap After Dark. You may have been to a channel and seen Gap After Dark in the chat.
Hello, I'm Nino.
We all, we all get around to different YouTube channels.
You're right. Sometimes it's kind of hard to keep it all straight in my head. So, anyways, continuing on, the surgery begins, and at first everything seems to be going well until the machine that does the replication from Worf's DNA on his spinal cord starts scanning his spine wrong. And so Dr. Russell has to do it manually. And keep in mind, they're under a time limit because in order to get his spinal cord out, his brainstem had to be completely severed. So Worf pretty much had 3 hours of life support before essentially he went brain dead and then dead. Also, it's worth Gap After Dark saying, I think I've seen you, Paul. Didn't you fight Mexican Iron Man in a lightsaber duel? I'm on for some really great channels, including Pacific 414. Yes, that is true. I did fight and was unceremoniously defeated by Mexican Iron Man. But if you haven't seen Twitter, there's been a development. Mexican Iron Man lately has been in a feud with the fictional alien Alf. And apparently there's going to be a matchup between Mexican Iron Man and Alf sometime. And I offer my services to Mexican Iron Man as his tag team partner.
Alf? You mean,
Yes.
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 You know that annoying hairy alien
How
from
th-
Melmac.
How that started, I have no clue, but I think it's hilarious and I'm here for it.
I'm a fight in the sky.
Yes. And here's the thing, though. ActionCom does make a good point. Spock went a full day without his brain. I wonder, but then again, though, Vulcan physiology and Klingon physiology are far, far different. So I don't know that Worf would have been able to do the same. And let's be honest, that was kind of a stupid episode, Spock's brain was. Goofy and hilarious, but come on, really?
Come on, I would hope that if something happened to my brain, you guys would come and find it, get it back, and hook me up to some kind of machine where it's remote controlled.
But you're forgetting the ultimate question, Pacific. Brain! What is brain? Yes, Mexican Iron Man versus Alf. So anyways, the surgery takes place, and they try to revive Worf, but they're unsuccessful, and Worf is declared dead. And it's very obvious that, of course, Dr. Russell is upset that she thought she had all the research and information right. The surgery went pretty much as they expected, but Worf still died. But of course, Dr. Crusher is outright angry. And she even takes like a cheap shot at Dr. Russell at one point, saying, we wouldn't be in this situation if we were doing things the traditional way.
See, her smugness, and I don't like, if there's no alternatives, what's the harm of trying something new?
You're right.
If you now, not everything would work, but if you're desperate, it's better than if Worf clearly doesn't want to do be disabled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Crusher's attitude, I just don't like either of the doctors in this episode.
So basically, what ultimately saves Worf is the fact that there are a lot of redundancies in Klingon physiology. Basically, Klingons have like a built-in backup system in their body where if an organ fails, there's a backup that can take its place, which I'm assuming is so that they can survive longer in battle.
Also,
One of those,
the conditions on Kronos, we don't know what the conditions were like early on in Klingon evolution, but you have to figure that if they have redundancies in their system, that it might have been a harsh reality for them each and every day, and that's why those redundancies existed.
yes. I also, by the way, happen to know that in season 7, we're going to see a glimpse of what early Klingon evolution looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And I am both simultaneously looking forward to and dreading that episode, because you guys know I don't do horror stuff.
I know, but Genesis does what Nintendo don't.
Which
Give me Genesis!
which episode?
Oh my gosh, Mike.
Which episode is that? The one where they're eating?
Genesis.
Genesis is the name of the episode of season 7.
Oh, there's another one that's. I won't say what it is though.
Okay, fair enough. I also know, by the way, that episode has Barclay turning into a spider.
Yes. And
I've seen
Riker's a
it.
cave.
Yep, and Deanna Troy's a frog. And Worf becomes a thing, literally.
Did they rip off? Did they rip off Barclay becoming a spider from It? Do you think so, Mike? Stephen King said.
I could see that as a possibility. I mean,
We're talking about the original, not the remake.
I know. The one with Tim Curry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So anyways, continuing on, the episode ends with Worf successfully recovering, and he's getting back his mobility. Meanwhile, there's a final conversation between Dr. Crusher and Dr. Russell, where pretty much Dr. Crusher says it like this: "Congratulations on your experiment working, but let's be honest, you got lucky, and Worf got lucky. And if I were in your position, I don't think I could celebrate this victory. So enjoy it." So I think ultimately it boils down to this. Considering everything, including the fact that the operation did be successful, though there were hiccups in it, who do you think was ultimately in the right here? Dr. Crusher, or better yet, who do you think had the better argument?
Well, that's a hard one.
Oh, that's tough.
I tend, admittedly, to, even though yes, Dr. Russell ended up being successful, I end up siding with Dr. Crusher here, because it is very, very dangerous to practice medicine in a reckless, experimental way. There's a reason why it's an unfortunate thing, but it's honestly the reason why we have things like animal testing, because we don't have holodecks yet, so we need something to test on these new medicinal theories or whatever before we can use them on humans. It's a sad part of life, but it's unfortunately a necessary evil. So, and yeah, Dr. Crusher even says in this episode, when she's talking to Picard, the number one rule of practicing good medicine is to never make the patient worse. And while, yes, Worf did get better, he had to get worse before he got better.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, hello to Brandon the Anime Guy, who says, when all else fails, right to try. Yeah, that makes sense too. See, here's the thing. This is an unfortunate and uncomfortable discussion, and that's honestly why, at least this second time around, I actually really enjoyed the episode because, again, it's another one of those episodes, kind of along the lines of Who Watches the Watchers, where it gives you something to think about, and you could see where both sides of the equation are right and wrong.
Hmm. And this is what Star Trek used to do very well: present both sides of the argument and let the viewer decide.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
So anyways, let's rank this one out of 5. I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm
After
gonna
the
give
second
this a
time.
4.
Okay.
4.
3.5.
3.5. Okay. So it sounds like about a 4 out of 5 average. Okay. Not bad. All right. By the way, Brandon, if you're up for it, you know where the link is to join us. If you need it, I can send it to you also. So with that, let's move on to what I'm sure is going to be the hot button topic episode of the night, The Outcast.
How relevant is this episode to what's currently going on?
Very. So, got to talk about what this show is about before talking about why it's so relevant. So, Outcast is about Riker going on a rescue mission to rescue a shuttle that's, I believe, caught in negative space. And this shuttle belongs to a race of androgynous, almost unisex people. Literally non-binary people. That at one point in the conversation, his partner that he's working with even admits that they have a genderless pronoun that they use, that there's no translation for it in English. So right off the bat, what does that sound like from a certain community these days?
Sounds like the Twitter civilization, or the Twitter.
Brandon saying, yeah, this episode sucks. This episode's also has a very depressing end too.
Yes.
I wouldn't say
And
this episode sucks. It makes you
It's,
think. Our world is going to become this if it keeps acting the way it does.
It's yeah, some of it was interesting, some of it was just boring, I felt, but I mean, this race is also considered aliens, so of course, wouldn't aliens have non-binary people in their community?
In
It's
theory, yes.
yeah.
So, anyways, everything revolving around rescuing the shuttle, that all succeeds. However, during the course of it, Riker and I'm not even going to bother Soren, that's what the person's name was.
Mhm.
During the course of this, Riker and Soren end up falling in love, and Soren ends up no longer wanting to be binary. She wants to recognize the gender that she was born as, female. And oh my goodness, Brandon's saying to Gap After Dark, this episode does not exist for me. It is that bad. Wow, that is a spicy take. And Brandon, I believe I got you a new fan. So you're welcome. So anyways, however, though, showing any sort of gendered behavior on their planet is completely forbidden. And anyone that does show any form of gendered behavior gets taken in for, I guess you could say, the alien version of conversion therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. reprogramming,
Basically.
basically.
Yes,
Oh.
brainwashing, as
I
Brandon
think
put it.
I think that's where Brandon misconstrues the episode, because clearly these the races have genders, but society has basically reformed them to you're nothing. Basically, you're one and done. And if you
But-
think otherwise, then you it's time to convert you. So it's kind
But-
of the reverse of how what people want you to do.
That still seems like the same thing, though, to me. But anyways, continuing on, there's another of these people that had been somewhat suspicious of Soren, and eventually Soren gets found out for wanting to be gendered. And so she's brought before the legal system of her homeworld, and Riker does his absolute best to try and bail her out, basically saying, listen, this is my fault, don't hold her responsible. But she decides, you know what, no, I'm done lying, this is who I am, this is who I want to be. And she ends up getting sent to conversion therapy anyways. And Riker, of course, petitions to Picard, can't you do something about this? But unfortunately, they can't because of the Prime Directive. So, but he also says, I trust you won't do anything that violates the Prime Directive. So Riker and Worf sort of go down to the planet off the record, and they try and convince Soren to come back to the Enterprise and seek asylum with them. But it's too late, because by this point, Soren has undergone the brainwashing and is now completely devoid of what had made her unique before. And of course, Riker is left heartbroken. So Brandon says, yeah, this episode just does nothing for me. It is a precursor to what the Twitter weirdos are doing now. And you guys were talking about this before. ActionCom mentioned it in the comments that back when this first aired, you could have taken it as Cash Money says, yeah, it's an alien race that just happens to be genderless or happens to completely not acknowledge gender, whichever one you want to put in there. Nowadays, it takes on a whole new meaning, and unfortunately, I have no choice but to view it through that meaning, given the world that we live in now, and being that this is my first time seeing it. So, yeah. This episode, I honestly cannot say that I like it. I do not hate it. I will say that. It is I'm willing to give it the fact that it is a well-told story. It's just not a story that I like. What do you guys think?
It's thought-provoking. It gets people to talk. I mean, we're having a discussion about it right now.
Yes.
Mhm.
And, how this episode fits into current day, how it fit into current day of 1992.
Yes. So, Crits, anything that you want to add to that? Crit, you there?
Oh, my mic wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
And we're back.
Okay. So, to answer your question, ActionCom, did you not like it because it ended on a downer, or was the subject not to your taste? Honestly, both. Like seriously, I was really rooting for Soren to actually go aboard the Enterprise and seek asylum and be who she really wanted. Like, it would have been a great story of someone breaking out of a society of oppression. But unfortunately, this time the oppression won. And yes, that does sometimes happen, but that doesn't make it any less sad. So, because of all of that, I'm going to give this episode a 2 out of 5. And it's only getting 2 because it's that thought provoking of an episode. And so, what do you think, Mike?
I'm gonna give it a 3.
3. Okay, Cash.
I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Okay, and Crits.
I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5.
Okay, fair enough then. And Brandon, I already know what you're gonna say. Gap After Dark says, now I remember this episode. He rates it a 1.2. And Brandon, I'm willing to bet you already said it. You don't even acknowledge this episode, so we'll just say goose egg for you.
Toss it out the airlock.
Toss it out the airlock. All right. So, next episode is Cause and Effect. And this episode starts in the middle of a crisis where the Enterprise is badly damaged. The ship is rocking really, really bad. And apparently they had struck something and it completely took out one of their warp nacelles.
Mm-hmm.
And
The starboard
doing-
nacelle.
the starboard nacelle. They're doing everything that they can to fix the issue and right the ship, but nothing's working. And eventually it gets so bad that Picard has to give the order, all hands abandon ship. But before he can, the Enterprise blows up and we go to the opening credits. Then once we're back from the opening credits, weirdly, we're looking at a poker game between Riker, Data, Crusher, and Worf. And of course, Crusher wins the poker game, but the poker game's interrupted by Geordi needing help in sickbay, saying something about how he had been experiencing feelings of like dizziness when he was up on the catwalks. And Crusher says it looks like an inner ear infection, but you don't show the same signs, which strikes her as weird because she felt like she had talked to him about this before, but brushed it off as if it was nothing. Later on, she is getting ready for bed. She's trimming some of the plants that she sees in her room, and she lays down to try and sleep. And she hears voices in her room. And not only that, but she gets reports that other people had heard voices in their room too. And so she presents this to the senior officers, but the meeting's interrupted when they notice a time distortion up ahead of them, and they see a ship travel through the time distortion, and it's heading right for them on a collision course. And so Riker and Data each give a different option of how to respond. Riker wants to completely depressurize the shuttle bays and use the momentum from that to push them out of the way, while Data wants to use the tractor beam to deflect the ship away. They also cannot hail them.
No, they're not responding to hails.
Exactly. So they try using the tractor beam, and it pushes the ship, but the ship glances off their nacelle, breaking it, and thus the ship is destroyed. So that is the end of the episode, unfortunately, and it's a very sad episode, I think. Don't you guys think? But it almost seems weird that it feels like we've talked about this before. But
Yes.
Yeah,
But
I seem to recall we had the same conversation not too long ago.
yeah, I mean, but then again, we've seen other examples of the ship getting heavily damaged. For example, anytime they went up against the Borg, or for example, that one, I believe the episode was called Disaster, where Counselor Troy ended up being in command of the bridge. So
or Cash didn't like redheads, or
that is true.
It's
Cash,
true. That is the rumor.
Yes. By the way, speaking of that,
sometimes.
speaking of that Mexican Iron Man thing that I had told you guys about on Twitter, I had sent a video clip in my response to him. Like, it was basically me trying to be funny, be like me jumping in to save Mexican Iron Man. Like,
Wait, Paul.
yeah,
You're gonna say that you're gonna want to be his tag team partner.
yeah, I did.
I think we've had this conversation before.
I think we did too. Did I happen to share the clip of Stone Cold running in to save Mankind so that he could win the WWE title?
Yes, you posted it on Twitter just today.
But I haven't posted it on Twitter yet.
That's odd.
Well, anyways, though, let's talk about this episode called Cause and Effect. So the episode begins surprisingly with the ship already in a crisis. The ship's been badly damaged. One of the warp nacelles is completely damaged, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do here. Nothing's working, and eventually Picard has to give the order to abandon ship, but unfortunately the ship is destroyed. Then we go to the opening titles, and weirdly they open up on a poker game between okay, hold on. We had this skit planned and it's going wrong because my memory's blanking out on me.
We're having some technical difficulties here.
Cash doesn't like
Okay,
redheads.
all right. Let's set aside this skit.
It got burned. It's
Yeah,
done
we-
for.
We failed on this one. So
It's over.
Get your
Game over,
Clip
man.
that as
Game
a
over.
Tuesday Night Trek epic fail.
yes, we'll count that one as a Tuesday Night Trek epic fail. So here to make up for it is another time where here's a couple times back to back of us being funny when it actually worked out well. After that detour, getting back to the story.
Yeah, back to Punch Face.
Yes. I'm just gonna call him that for the rest of the episode. So
I'm gonna
Padme,
rush in and punch his face.
so Padme and Punch Face make
gonna
it
punch him
Anakin-
right in the
and
Clovis.
Anakin. Wait, where's that on the bottom?
Hey, I can sound like Cash Money. Did you know that?
Do it.
Let's hear it.
Oh my god. No. They put woke stuff. They put woke stuff in my Star Wars.
You know that.
Oh,
If
gosh.
Cash Money did inhale a bunch of helium, that might work for a
Maybe.
Cash Money voice.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure.
All right, so
Possible.
like I said, that skit failed, so we'll just talk about the episode like normal.
You-
Pretty much
You
what
ruined
hap-
it, Paul. It
I
was
know,
going
I'm
so
sorry.
well.
That was my fault.
Paul,
Here,
you have done this
here.
to yourself.
Oh, now he only has 3 pips on.
There you go.
Uh,
I am the captain now. I have the cheeseburger.
Crit's gonna dress up as Mini Godzilla and give you a cheeseburger. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but just remember, when it comes to Godzilla,
All this intravenous stuff's no good for you. Stick to smoking.
Mm. Nah, I don't smoke, but I do have cheeseburgers. So
yes. So basically, what happens is, and Gap After Dark mentions it, the Enterprise is caught in a time loop where they are stuck repeating the same events over and over and over, starting with that poker game, then to
No help from the Klingon.
no help from the Klingon, and Crusher and all of them start noticing that the same cards start getting dealt to everyone, almost to the point that they can predict what's going to happen. Then eventually Dr. Crusher is able to predict that Geordi is going to come in with complaints of what feels like an ear infection. Then she's going to hear voices in her room, and it all culminates, with the ship blowing up. So they have to figure out a way to break the time loop. Now, admittedly, when I watched this today, I was a little bit confused as to how this correlated to them breaking out of the time loop, but the number 3 started popping up in that third loop, where everyone ends up with a 3 of a kind, with the number 3 in there. And then the number 3 also just randomly pops up other places where Data happens to mention it. And somehow that correlates to them doing the depressurizing the
main shuttle bay.
The shuttle bay, and that actually managed to get them to succeed. So how did that tie together?
I forgot.
Pacific, anything?
The only thing I would have said is that, we've seen these events occur over and over again. So, how the main shuttle bay correlates to the number 3, I don't know. Unless you want to go on this limb and say there are 3 shuttle bays on the Enterprise D.
I guess.
I don't know. Because anything I'm going to say is going to sound like I'm stretching it, because I would be.
Right. Yeah, it honestly is something that just didn't quite make sense to me. Apparently it was Riker's idea. Riker has 3 of these on his collar.
Yeah, 3 pips.
And it's what Data saw just before the loop changed.
Yeah, he looked at Riker's collar and the 3 pips, and then the next time they're getting ready to go through the causality loop, Data mentions, the number 3 when they avoid it, and Picard, if I recall correctly, because I didn't watch the episode, but I'm trying to go by memory, but Picard, or was it Riker, that asked him, why do you change, your idea of using the tractor beam to using the shuttle bay to decompress it? And Data said something to the effect, the correlation of the number 3.
Yes. So here's where we get a real surprise, though, in this episode. The ship that hit them, that now has avoided them, looks like the same model of ship as what the Defiant was. I believe I have that right, from Wrath of Khan. The
Reliant.
The Reliant. Okay. The Defiant. Wait, no. The Defiant was from the Tholian Web. I forgot that. So that ship was from the era of the TOS movies. And let me look up who the captain was, because I know
Captain Batesman, played by Kelsey Grammer.
Yes, played by Kelsey Grammer. Morgan Bateson. That's what his name was. And he is completely confused as to what happens. Like, he's able to, extend proper greetings to the captain and all that, but realizes, wait a minute, that's not the Enterprise that I know, and your ship's not in our registry. And so Picard has their captain come aboard. But unfortunately, that's where the episode ends. I would have really loved to see the two captains from the 2 different eras talking. Like, they're even wearing the Wrath of Khan era outfits and everything.
Yeah, the Monster Maroon uniforms.
Which, now that I have this, I want to get one of those uniforms.
I don't blame you.
So, what did you guys think ultimately of this episode?
This episode, 4 out of 5.
Yes, me too.
4 out of 5. Yeah, I'll go 4 out of 5 also.
Yeah, 4 out of 5.
Really good episode.
It was. So next, let's talk about the first duty. Now, this
And yes,
is
real quick to answer Action Com's question. Yes, Kelsey Grammer was on Cheers, and then he had his own spin-off series called Frasier.
Mhm. Yep. He also was a reoccurring voice actor as Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons. I don't know if he'll come back, but
He also played Beast
He
in
has
the
been.
X-Men movies.
really, really good Beast too. He's a quality Beast.
So, anyways, next for this episode, and he even Gap After Dark gave. I tell you what, Gap After Dark, would you like to join us on the panel for the rest of the stream? And if he does, Pacific, can you get him the link?
I'll go ahead and DM him the link.
Yeah, because giving rankings for this stuff and contributing everything that you are, I want to extend the invitation. And apparently he was also on Money Plane. By the way, guys, in case you guys haven't heard, real quick, just a quick announcement. Echo Base Network did get remonetized.
I saw that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm typing them a quick chat in their stream celebrating it. So, next episode is the first duty. Now, this is another Wesley episode, and Cash, you weren't here for this. You missed my hot take, but I believe that this is the best Wesley episode that we have seen. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a very good episode.
Yeah, Wesley's actually tolerable in this episode.
Wesley's fine, as he's gotten older. It's just, considering, I guess, as you guys were talking about before, this is supposed to be Gene Roddenberry reincarnated into this character. Like he basically inserted himself into TNG, and that's what is Wesley, I guess, right?
Yes.
That's very interesting. I didn't even know that before, but yeah, I think Wesley. I think any character can grow. They just have to write the character well. But yes, I like Wesley in this episode.
I wonder if Wesley was more tolerable in this episode because by this point, Gene Roddenberry had passed away and therefore didn't have as much control over the character. What do you guys think?
Maybe.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Because I could kind of see, I could see the case for that. So, anyways, the Enterprise is heading to Earth, where Captain Picard has been asked to give a speech for the commencement of the graduating class for Starfleet Academy. And of course, this gives everyone from the Enterprise a chance to visit and catch up with Wesley. However, Admiral Brand reaches out to Captain Picard on their way there and tells Picard that there's been a horrible accident during a training flight exercise where five different students went out in their own single one-man fighter, and unfortunately there was a horrible accident where Wesley ended up getting injured and one of the other kids unfortunately died. So they first go and see Wesley and make sure that he's okay, which he is, although he's having to do muscle exercises on his right arm to help work out the soreness. And then later, one of Wesley's classmates, whose name is, I want to say Lorcaine. Am I saying that right, guys?
Who?
The team leader of Nova Squadron.
Robert Duncan McNeil's character.
Yes.
Oh.
I'll just say the team leader.
Lucario. I think it's Lucario.
Lucario? That's
I might be saying
Pokemon.
it wrong.
Yeah, Lucario is a Pokemon.
I'm trying, man. It's late.
It's okay. So, anyways, of course, because Locarno.
Close
Thank
enough.
you. Thank
Close
you.
enough.
You almost got it, man. You almost there, dude.
The name of the cadet that died is Joshua Albert. Yes. So Locarno shows up and needs to talk with Wesley. So they talk, and basically they're getting ready for an inquiry that's about to open up as to what happened. And everyone that was part of the team that survived, of course, tells their story. And it's very clear that just things do not add up with their story. For example, one of the students is talking about how she was flying only with her sensors, not visual. Another one just didn't happen to see what happened in the even though they were at the rear of the formation, they didn't happen to see what caused the crash. And just things do not add up. And everyone looks uncomfortable about this. And they end up throwing the guy that died under the bus, saying that he was feeling inadequate about flying. He was feeling too nervous. And the admirals accept that answer for now, but they know that something's up. And then later on, in a private conversation between the four students, Wesley's like, this is wrong. This is completely wrong. We basically lied to them because it wasn't his fault that he crashed. But of course, the team leader's like, listen, this is for the best. This is for the good of the team. We need to keep to our story. Meanwhile, Picard is reuniting with one of the groundskeepers of the I almost want to say of Hogwarts, because for whatever reason right now I'm thinking of Hagrid. But no, the groundskeeper of Starfleet Academy named Boothby, who kind of, I guess you could say, almost serves as a similar role to Hagrid, where he's the well-meaning groundskeeper that's there for advice for the students, you could almost say, right?
Oh, well, because he helps mentor the students too. He may be the groundskeeper, but if there's a student who needs help, he does it. He helped Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And ActionCom says there's a Bajoran cadet named Hajar. Keep an eye on her. She will be back.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. I take it in Deep Space Nine?
Oh, no. She'll be back in Next Gen.
Oh, fun. So anyways, continuing on. Wesley then gives... Oh, there's a car
Coming.
There goes my ride. Wesley gives his statement to the inquiry, and it's very clear that he is lying through omission. Like he's telling the bare minimum that he can, but it's clear that he's leaving things out. And everyone in the room, including Picard, can sense that just something's not right here. So again, after another conversation with Boothby, we get what is, in my opinion, the best scene in this episode, where Picard calls Wesley into his ready room.
I love
And
this scene.
all the other times that Picard and Wesley have ever been one-on-one, Picard has never quite been a captain to Wesley. He's been more of a father figure, kind of taking the place of Mr. Crusher ever since he passed away. In this scenario, though, that is taken out the window. Now it is a very pissed off captain dealing with a Starfleet recruit. Almost as if in the real life military, a Navy captain was dealing with a lowly E1 seaman recruit, which I have seen. And Picard basically lays it out like this. I know exactly what you did in there. You lied in order to help protect the reputation of your team leader so that he could graduate pretty much as the hero of the class, because you guys weren't in this one diamond position up there that you said you were. You were there trying to do, I forget what the name is, but it's this one maneuver that basically would have been a great spectacle, but it went wrong.
I thought they called it a starburst.
Yeah, something K-word starburst. A maneuver that had been previously banned at Starfleet Academy for 100 years, because the last time it was attempted by cadets, all 5 cadets died. And Picard calls him out. You know, you're lying to protect your friend.
You have a responsibility, whether it's scientific proof or personal truth. You have this responsibility as long as you wear that uniform.
Yeah. And if you cannot do that, then you do not deserve to wear that uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how even... Okay, so this is what the actual name... A Colvord Starburst is what it's called. And I like how Picard pretty much recapped their entire history together up to that point, from way back in Encounter at Farpoint, when Wesley first came onto the bridge and Picard was annoyed at him for even being there to begin with, as well as being presumptuous enough to sit in his chair and point out what each one of the panels did. But as you know, the story was told more and the two of them spent more time together, Picard had grown to like Wesley and had no doubts that one day he would become a fine officer. But now that has been shattered. And you can just see, even when he's not yelling at Wesley, you can see when he's talking calmly, just that pure, not just anger, but disappointment.
He's disappointed
in his eyes.
He was essentially his father, like you said, in the place of Jack Crusher. So he was disappointed in what Wesley did, especially after what Wesley, helped do each and every mission on the Enterprise.
Picard had high expectations of Wesley, and now here's Wesley crushing those expectations. Like even to the point that he does not call him Wesley, he just calls him by ensign.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this is no longer a personal connection here. This is purely a professional encounter in the worst way possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, like I said, I believe that is the best episode in this scene. And honestly, I dare say the best episode with the best scene of any episode with Wesley in it, where it's him finally realizing that his actions have consequences in the worst way. Because yes, Wesley screwed up. For example, the nanites thing was his fault, but no one died from that. Here, someone died.
And I got a question for you, Paul, and for Crit and for Cash. What do you guys think of the cadet uniforms? Do you like them? Do you not like them?
I like them enough.
Yeah, I like them. They're fine.
Yeah, I like them.
I mean, they're not anything that I would want, but I like them okay. So, anyways, Wesley tries to confront the team leader about telling the truth, but he's not willing to. In fact, he even says, if you're not willing to put the good of the team over yourself, then resign and leave Starfleet Academy. Because apparently it's about the good of the team. The idea that they were going to stick together as a team and even request, once they graduated, to be assigned to the same ships. That way they could always be together. But for Wesley, he just couldn't do that. So, at the last possible second at the next inquiry hearing, he decides to stand up and tell the truth. And it ends with the team leader getting completely expelled from Starfleet Academy. However, Wesley doesn't make it out scot-free. Because, yes, he does receive administrative punishments, but more than that, and this is what Picard highlights, more than that, your reputation is tarnished. So good luck trying to rebuild that. So I think this is one of the things that we've mentioned in previous previous Star Trek episodes, where it seems like we don't really have time to explore the consequences of a certain episode because it's episodic. We got to move on to the next thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's laid out crystal clear. You know, you didn't get expelled, but you're still going to have to pay for what you did. And I think that is something that Wesley really, like, his academic record is wiped out. He has to start completely over. So that, and given the fact that everyone's now going to be looking at him lesser than what they did before, like, honestly, forget his academic record getting wiped out. If I was Wesley, my reputation getting destroyed like that would be the worst punishment out of them all.
Well, think about it. You know, here's Wesley Crusher. He was one of the star pupils of the Enterprise. So he's already had some experience out there in deep space. And, you know, the Admiralty will look at that. Everybody who's a professor will look at that thinking, this is Wesley Crusher. He served under Captain Picard. Picard has a reputation, so that was probably another reason why Picard gave him the dressing down. Not just because he did something real stupid, but because he embarrasses Picard.
Mm-hmm. It ultimately reflected poorly on Picard's mentorship.
Okay, if Gene Roddenberry was alive, do you think this episode would have gone through?
Oh,
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Probably
Because
not.
this was basically his OC losing everything, basically.
Not to mention, Gene Roddenberry, if I remember correctly what Nerdporial was always talking about, never wanted to imagine this type of human conflict in the future. Yeah, naturally there's going to be disagreements, but I don't think those disagreements included something of this nature.
No, I don't think a story like this would have flown if Gene Roddenberry were alive and healthy and still in control of the show.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go 5 out of 5 on this one. I'm going perfect score. What do you guys think?
I'm going to be the one guy that says 4.5 out of 5.
Okay. Crit?
5 out of 5.
Cash?
4 out of 5.
Okay. Fair enough. So with that, then, let's move on to the last episode. And
Oh man, can we just give a brief recap of this episode?
The higher
I can sum this episode up in one statement. It's a Lwaxana Troi episode.
the higher
just
the
what?
fewer.
Okay, I'll give you a brief recap. Lwaxana Troi comes on the ship. Worf's son's involved. She does things with Worf's son, and then Worf gets involved. Nothing of value really happens during the episode, and we
There's
move
a
on.
mud bath, Crit. Come on, how could you not like the mud bath?
I'll say this: there's a way better Worf and a son episode with Data that a lot of people might not like, but I like. And it's way better
Let me
than
guess,
this
does it
episode.
happen to involve them going out to the west?
Maybe.
I'm aware of that episode too, although I'm not sure what it entails. In fact, doesn't that episode also entail lore?
No.
No.
Lore doesn't come back for a while, but
It doesn't. It does involve the holodeck.
yeah,
Actually,
the
Tom saying
holodeck-
proof positive that Troy was not up to raising Alexander.
All
right, so
what's your scores for this?
Well, for real, let's actually get into it just a little bit more in depth.
You had
Although-
3 different situations, and the only one that I felt that was kind of interesting was the one with Alexander and Oksana, because but it still was just a mess of an episode, especially the goo it was all
Yeah.
over the place.
The goo.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
goo.
although, Mike, you could almost argue that was the first canonical appearance of Yaphet, right?
You could say that, although you don't have Norm Macdonald and
Yaphet's green, not orange.
true.
Maybe he had eaten food coloring.
Although I will admit, I do like the part where Worf and Deanna go into the holodeck and that face
Mhm.
pops up and
Yeah.
and Worf just smacks it. And
Yeah.
He just smacks it in the
And what-
last scene where he's you just sit here like in the mud, and that did make me laugh.
he was not enjoying
He
it.
was not happy. No.
So, basically, Luoxana comes aboard the ship because she wants to get married aboard the Enterprise to a foreign dignitary. Meanwhile, Worf is having problems at home with Alexander. The two are not connecting. Deanna's trying to help them with this. And Luoxana decides to undermine everything that Deanna and Worf had been working with Alexander. And basically, it ends up with him trying to outright rebel against his father's authority. And also, there's certain scenes where, yes, I know you only see from here up of her, but you see Majel Barrett not wearing any clothes. If that had happened in the original, when she was of the age of the original series, I would have nothing wrong with that. Here, it's kind of creepy, especially given the fact that she's near Alexander, who is a Klingon but is a kid. We also see her walk naked through 10 Forward for the wedding, because apparently traditional Betazoid marriages, everyone's naked.
Yeah, they don't wear clothing.
Woohoo! You
Yeah,
ever been
so-
to Nudist Beach?
No. And I have no desire to go. So, yeah, this episode, out of 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so 0 out of 5. I take it.
Not 0. Nothing's a 0 for me. But I will go 1. Maybe 1.5. But probably 1.
Nothing says. How about the sequels?
The sequels? We're not talking about the sequels. We're talking Star Trek.
What about STD?
We're talking about the Next Generation.
What
Besides,
about Picard?
I haven't seen those. I can't rank them. I'm only going off hearsay.
Oh my
when I say that
gosh,
they suck.
Crit.
Sooner or later, you will consider a 0 out
Okay.
of 5.
All right.
We're gonna
All right,
record
here
that.
you
What
go.
about
Here you go,
this?
Crit.
What about that?
What about The Loss?
What about the Lost? Oh, that's a horrible episode. Me and Mikey.
Where am
No.
I?
No, that is a great episode.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong. You are wrong.
She's
You've got an issue. Here's a tissue.
as Crit would say. You still haven't
using
even
your own
seen
clip
that
against
movie.
me.
That's
Using
right.
using that clip against me. I see. Well, guess what? It's 3-1. We win. Majority rules.
But you forget.
Booyah.
But you forget. I'm the captain. If
Hey,
I can
you
do this
reduced
without
yourself
stabbing
in
myself
rank.
in the...
You reduced yourself in rank, so
I know. And the back of my collar came undone. I will put this back though for the next one. But anyways, so that is pretty much it for tonight. Tomorrow, and I'm going to mention this too. Next week will be the last Tuesday Night Trek that we talk about Next Generation for a while. That episode's going to be us covering 21 through 25. We're going to stop at the episode just before Time's Arrow because I don't like breaking up two-parters.
Okay.
And then Tuesday Night Trek, pretty much for the foreseeable future, is going to revert to the Revisited series. Pretty much you could almost call it TNT Retro or something. That won't be the official name, but you could think of it like that. Where Tuesday Night Trek will revert back to us covering the original series and the movies with Michael. Of course, Cash and Crit, you guys are invited to be part of that also, especially once we get to the movies, because I know, Crit, you wanted to be there first when we talked Wrath of Khan, but for reasons I can't remember, you couldn't make it.
Well, I'm sad because we're stopping our TNG streams without finishing TNG.
We're not stopping. We're taking a break. Pretty much, we're going to get Michael caught up to where we are now. That way, we can hit TNG Season 6 and DS9 all together and not have to worry about like a secondary Trek stream.
So,
and question.
We're going to
about
finish
TNG
Season
and
5
DS9.
and next week, right?
Say again?
We're going to finish Season 5 next week, right?
Yes,
Alright.
with the exception
Okay.
of Time's Arrow.
Okay. Then I vote that we have the Inner Light as the last, as the final, as we have a watch party for that one, because I consider that the best
Agreed.
episode of the Next Generation.
Agreed. And Pacific, what were you going to say?
Yeah, what were you going to say, Pacific?
Well, I was going to say, and when we get to the next gen episode, Birthright, are we going to also watch DS9's first episode, Emissary, since those episodes take place at the same time with the Enterprise at DS9?
I don't know yet. Let me think about that and get back to you. And, well, by then, also, Michael will be a deciding factor in this too, so we'll get his input.
Don't
when we
forget, DS9 makes references to Generations. So
does it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When does Generations take place, though?
After, you could say a couple months after the end of TNG.
Okay, then we'll figure out where it is in the timeline and place it in its appropriate spot. And real quick, hello to Cobra Disney Jedi. So, real quick, just a quick explanation for why we're doing this, aside from Michael getting caught up. Being perfectly honest with you guys, I stream on here too much, and I need basically to enjoy my life more off of YouTube than I do on YouTube. Don't get me wrong, I love hanging out with you guys, both in Discord and on here, and doing the gaming streams. But doing a stream every night is getting to be a little bit too much for me. So I'm going to be I'm going to be cutting back on streams as much as I can, starting in 2 weeks, combining our, I guess you could say, Tuesday Night Trek and Wednesday Night Trek Revisited. So that's the logic behind this.
I completely understand where you're coming from. Last year, I was doing the box score each and every night, recapping each and every game I could, and it does burn you out.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm burned out to the point that I want to stop this together. God forbid I ever get that bad, but it has been brought to my attention that I'm neglecting my actual real life relationships. So I'm going to endeavor to fix that.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a lot of work. I mean, doing 2-3 streams a week is good, but doing one every day is going to definitely burn you out, man. For sure.
Pick a day. Yeah, pick a day you want. Don't try to limit yourself.
Yes, that is the idea. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of a small update. one other thing, guys, is this weekend. Says take a break this weekend. Cobra Kai is on. We're still going to have a Sunday stream, but Saturday I will be watching as much of Cobra Kai as I can. And our Sunday stream will be somewhat of a return to Star Wars content because, well, we'll talk about that on Sunday as to why we're coming back. But anyways, though, as far as tonight goes, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to Pacific 414. Subscribe to the Phantom Hooligans, which I am part of, and subscribe down there to Crit at Everest Productions, where he does something called Star Wars Revitalized. And we will talk to you guys later.